So the entire concept of genetic mapping is based on measuring the amount of crossing over that occurs between two genes on a chromosome. And the reason it works, or the reason it makes sense, is that crossing over generally occurs at any location randomly along the chromosome. And so the chance that a crossover would happen in between two genes would be greater if the genes are further apart, because there's more points for possible crossover. If the genes are very close together, you would have very few opportunities for a crossover in between those two genes. And so if you measure a lot of crossovers between two genes, that's an indicator of large amount of distance. If you don't, it's an indicator of small amount of distance. Keep in mind that there tends to be a crossover between two homologous chromosomes for every 50 map units of length. And so remember that 50 is an indicator of the genes really not being linked. But that's the basis of genetic mapping, that when genes are close together, you won't get very many crossovers between them. When genes are further apart, you will. So when we looked at Mendel's crosses, I didn't really mention this because it was too much information at the time, but it turned out that Mendel studied 7 different genes. Each gene had 2 alleles, but 7 genes that were located on only 4 chromosomes of the pea plant. But the ones that were on the same chromosome were more than 50 map units apart, so they behaved as if they were unlinked. But there was one pair of genes that should have, in the data, in a dihybrid cross, should have demonstrated linkage, meaning the dihybrid cross should not have had a 9:3 to 3:1 ratio. However, when we look at Mendel's publication, he does not report data for that particular dihybrid cross. We don't know whether he performed that cross or not, but usually I like to have students speculate. He was pretty meticulous in his carrying out of his experiments. It could have been that he just maybe didn't happen to do that particular cross, or that when he got the data, he thought maybe something had gone wrong, something had been messed up. That would be usually my first assumption when I get data that's unexpected. So we're not sure what happened there, if he did the cross or not, but it's an interesting thing to know. There is kind of an urban legend that he had a gardener who helped him, who was known to be a drunk. So whether or not he thought maybe that gardener had messed something up, but that's an urban legend. Urban legend, science urban legend, I guess. But in any case, so Mendel did not see in his data, as far as we know, any linkage. And probably that was a good thing, because he was trying to lay out the real basic rules of inheritance. And this would have added a complication, certainly, if he had encountered it. So that's the end of Chapter 5 lecture. And you will need to practice the 2-point mapping and 3-point mapping and composite mapping problem solving.